1 year ago, I made a video about the vinyl format, my collection, and what sets it apart from streaming services and other formats. And while I still love vinyl and will continue to buy albums on it, things like price and maintenance were hampering my enjoyment of the format even back then. So in the years since my vinyl video, along with checking out the iPod scene, I also decided to explore the world of the compact disc. This video is all about CDs, how they stack up against vinyl, what benefits there are to having a CD collection, everything. And with this much music to cover, I think it's best to start with the collection's origins. Okay, so we're gonna go back, but not that far actually, just to the vinyl video itself. That's where all of this starts. As I said before, my only gripes with vinyl, which I brought up in the video, were price and quality, both of which didn't affect me when I originally began collecting. Back in the glory days of 2021, vinyl was gaining popularity, but the prices hadn't soared yet. The expensive albums that I paid $50 to $60 for back then now go for like $80. The market really did shift at some point while I was off and on collecting. At first, I didn't really care how my records looked. Some of them aren't even complete because I would hang the sleeves up as posters. When I was young, I didn't care, but now paying about $40 per album and it arriving dinged or warped, or my favorite, 2 records that are the same, so I'm missing half the album, yeah, that bums me out. And with vinyl being so delicate, I never liked the idea of buying used. So the outlook I took following that video was to collect, but be more selective. I was only going to buy special releases and favorite albums. Good for the collection, but bad for variety. I couldn't go buck wild buying vinyl because it would either be too much, or another problem, I'd be looking for albums that were never released on the format. So that's why the collection there hasn't changed much. I've only got 10 albums since the video, but shopping with that outlook in mind did actually get me some of my favorite albums in the collection, like Rodeo and Cherry Bomb. One day I'll be more willing to throw everything I have at it, but as of now, I'm really happy with the collection. Anyway, enough with vinyl. Where does CD enter the picture? Well, funnily enough, we go to the day I posted that video. After it had went live, I was at Goodwill, browsing out of sheer curiosity, when I found this. Now, as a part-time idiot, I actually had no idea what this was when I found it. I was so used to finding junk at Goodwill that I assumed this was no use to me. I thought it was a VCR, next I thought it was a Laserdisc player, cause somehow that would be more likely than anything else, and then I finally opened my eyes and figured out, oh, it's a CD changer. Holy crap, bought it for $10. I didn't know if it could read albums or how to hook it up to my setup, but $10, you can't beat that. And the opening mechanism alone, my god, that's neat. So after a little bit of setup, I had the changer on my shelf and it worked. In the span of 24 hours, I had finished a video about vinyl and simultaneously began collecting CD. This is what we in the biz call consumerism. I think the best way to describe my process with CD is a learning experience. I only owned 3 albums at the point when I got it, so I really had no idea what I was going for. I didn't know what I wanted, I didn't know what to expect buying CDs, hell, I didn't even know where to set the player. Look at this atrocious setup. The angle doesn't make it look that bad, but not only are the speakers just sitting beside this sensitive equipment, but the massive CD player on top of this very old, very thin bookcase, constantly moving and spinning stuff, made it a mess. I struggled for months with where to store the set, finally now in a solid spot. Back to the collection, 2 things that were apparent to me at the start were 1, these are really cheap, and 2, I can get whatever I want. So a lot of my shopping reflects that. I continued pretty steadily until I picked up the iPod collection late last year. This is where I truly took off. Now buying CDs and ripping them to the iPod was building 2 libraries at once. It was genius. I had them on the shelf, but I also had them alongside my Spotify downloads. It was like a giant funnel of everything I listened to. So here I started to branch out harder. I started picking up anything that caught my eye, so I could listen to it and store more music on the iPod to have the super library over there. Used CDs I became really comfortable with. Not only were they in great condition most of the time, but if the price was right and it had a case, I'd probably buy it no matter what. And since the market for CDs is so much less crowded than vinyl, you can get rock bottom deals on mint condition albums without much effort, which became really fun. If you're one of the like 10 people who follow me on Instagram, then you saw me intermittently track the collection, and yeah, it got out of hand quick. I started buying lots just to see what the random albums I didn't know about were going to sound like, and I'm telling you, those have been some of the most fun listening sessions I've ever had. So not too long after I'd begun, I was already setting off to build a diverse collection of great music, and I went so hard, I maxed out my shelf. We started up here next to the games and ended up on its own level with a total of 85 albums. And I want to stress that I wouldn't have gotten to this number so quickly without two things: value and diversity. Starting with value, something that held me back originally was this thing of trying to collect CDs but also save specific albums for vinyl because I thought they'd fit in better with that collection. After realizing just how cheap CDs are, I threw that idea out, and now across both formats, I've been able to fill out most of my favorite artists' discographies for way cheaper than I would have if I only bought vinyl. The best example of me doing this by far is The Cure. God, I love The Cure, but buying 15 albums on vinyl, some of them going for hundreds of dollars, is not my kind of fun. So I settled for CDs, where I got 7 albums for $53, barely more than the cost of one vinyl album. And if you do like I did and buy lots, the price goes down even more. This Aphex Twin CD is like $30 on eBay, but since I found it in a lot no one wanted, I got it for $2. And that perfectly segues me into the second point. Another benefit to buying lots is having a diverse collection. I've got new albums, classic albums, rock, electronic, obscure compilation albums that I can't find online. There is such a wide range of music to find on this format. Not to keep reading about the point, but CDs were so cheap to produce at their peak that even the obscure stuff is really common. Major contrast from vinyl, where many albums weren't made at all in the format, and obscure stuff is really obscure. You're not gonna find some guy selling it for $3. So that is the story of the collection and how I got into collecting, but what about playing them? Alright, so this is going to be a pretty anticlimactic one. CDs sound exactly how you'd expect. They are better than vinyl and streaming, but there's no special characteristics. The thing I noticed the most is bass is a lot better, but in the end, it's digital audio. It is uncompressed digital audio, but most people can't really notice compression anyway. If you're looking for a crazy sound upgrade, you'll get it more through how you build your setup than the format itself. But if you are looking for the best of the best, an improvement on an improvement, there are Super Audio CDs, which can do surround sound and a bunch of other crazy stuff. They aren't mainstream and you'll need a dedicated player for them, but it is something you can consider. But for me, there's enough little features to CDs that improve the overall quality of my listening experience compared to vinyl. Let's start off with playback. Way better on CD. For starters, no flipping and changing records. I understand and even like that being a quirk of vinyl, but no amount of quirk beats practicality, especially when your record player starts to fail and pulls this party trick. Like, awesome, now I have to get up and stop it. Kinda ruins the put on a record and relax vibe a little bit. But here, I put the CD in, it plays. I have this incredible technology called skip buttons. If you hold them, you can fast forward the song. That's really cool for something I'm gonna mention in a minute. And some CDs support text, so you can see what song is playing. Not really the most necessary feature, but I like it. Then some cool features of having a changer specifically, the most obvious one being loading the thing up with albums. It's so nice to have essentially your own personal jukebox and pick a bunch of albums to leave in it. This opens up more opportunity than you'd think. Not only can you set up a custom rotation of albums and enjoy those as is, but there's a built-in shuffle mode that will indeed shuffle every track on every disc in the player, which is a bit insane of a feature. But again, going back to that idea of just hitting play and forgetting about it, this fits in perfectly with that and is a sick little novelty. One thing I dislike about my player though, is that when an album finishes, it's supposed to skip straight into what's next, and sometimes it just doesn't. Like seriously, this album should have ended minutes ago. I don't understand. Hidden tracks, my favorite feature of CDs. Since you can't really see tracks on a disc, many artists in the 90s and 2000s decided, hey, if we leave silence after the final track, most people are gonna stop the album. But the real ones who let it keep playing,
here go two more for y'all. Yeah.
What a cool concept that is basically stuck to this format. On vinyl, would it be much of a point in hiding tracks when you can see them very easily? And on streaming, it's basically an unspoken rule to chop these songs up properly, which I think is for the better. But if this could be like a built-in feature on a streaming service, I think it would bring a lot of fun into a first listen. Alright, so that's playing CDs, but like vinyl, listening to them is only half the story. There is so much you can do with a CD. This and DVD will go down as the most universal media formats to ever exist, as device support and user tools were ubiquitous. Let's start off with compatibility. It's endless. I can play CDs in the changer as established, but I can also play them here, 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 and here. The coolest place of all, a CD changer with wheels. True story, back when I got my first car, I didn't realize it wouldn't have aux, so for a while, all I could listen to was Wolf and Late Registration, and that era massively increased my attachment to those albums. That's the benefit of a format being supported on many devices. You have different reasons to use each one, and a great one is ripping and burning. Across my consoles and old laptop, I can take every album in my collection, rip them to a hard drive, and freely copy them to distribute however I like. Technically that's not true, but it's 2026, they can't really stop me. Music is worthless, I can pirate freely, and the way I've benefited from that is pretty simple. I ripped them all to the MacBook, and not only did I put the rips on my iPods, but the albums not on streaming, they went into my local files. We've transcended 3 generations of music formats with one disc, and we're not done yet. The inverse of ripping is burning. Pick up some blank CDs, put music on them, you're done. This comes in handy when you want albums that aren't available on CD. All you gotta do is buy some blank cases, find a printer, and then you can just make albums, which I know at that point I could just stream the album, but I like to have stuff on my shelf, obviously. So even if it's redundant, I think custom albums are really sick, and one day I'll get super into it and make some fire cases. By the way, have you guys noticed that? CD packaging is so underrated. This might be the best way to package anything. Too bad people have to be creative. There are about 2 main forms of CD packaging, with both having variations and such. Starting off with the classic jewel case. It just works, all plastic, easily replaceable, and fully customizable. There's different ways people make them, of course. Sometimes you can find these more complicated looking ones, or a 2-disc one, or a slim one, all less common but still pretty common. Then the next type, the Digipack. This was designed to be a more eco-friendly way to make CDs, and I admire that fight, but they took it so far, man. The original cases here, these are great. They do exactly what a jewel case did, but less wasteful. Neat. You can do more with art as well, that really opens things up more. But then they made an even slimmer version of it, now all paper, with your CD wedged into the smallest envelope man has ever built. I don't like these at all. They often stick out of the collection, and the CDs themselves are often stuck in the cardboard. And in my opinion, a sleeve of rough paper is the last place I'd want to store optical media. Everything about this is a bad vibe, but credit where credit's due. These cases haven't slighted me yet. Aside from just being repulsive, they are still fairly reliable. But what I really want to focus on is art. On the surface, CDs look fairly mundane compared to vinyl, but once you see an album that had good design behind it, you realize this format is really a blank canvas to put whatever you want on it. I have grown really fond of a well-designed CD. There's just so many ways to customize a disc. Many albums will do a basic print, no nonsense graphic on the CD, but many others opted to experiment. Multiple layers of paint, blank spots where light can reflect off of it, Apologies if it sounds like I'm gassing this up, but they don't want us to have these things anymore. This is literally a dying art, and a well-designed CD is one of my favorite things about the format. This is a piece of an album's aesthetic that you can't find anywhere on the internet, and I kinda appreciate that. Speaking of things not on the internet, manuals. CD manuals are loaded with all kinds of things. Lyrics, art, posters, shout out posters. It's all really neat. And the last neat thing about the packaging is this strip of plastic right here. What's so special about it? Nothing. But how artists use it is special. Most albums just fill it with the rest of the cover or leave it blank, but some put the title there, and again, for something so simple, I can't help but geek out about this. I get the same way about game cases. Don't know why. Anyway, last thing I wanted to talk about here was CD durability. In the vinyl video, a big criticism I made towards CD was that disc rot would inevitably impact a lot of albums, but it turns out that's not true at all. Disc rot is a symptom of poor manufacturing, not a design flaw of optical media, and I even have proof. 40-year-old CDs, they play perfectly fine. And even with the common stuff like scratches, maybe I've just been lucky, but my collection only has like 4 albums with skips. Everything else, even the kind of beat up stuff, plays fine. It's a way more robust format than I gave it credit for, and in my experience of buying them, most albums are pretty well taken care of, and if they aren't, get the price low enough to where the condition doesn't matter. Here's how. The CD market is insane. There are so many deals to be had. If you want to know how I ended up with 80 albums, it's cause I couldn't resist passing them up. This shit got addicting quick, I'm not gonna lie. Let's just start off with general prices. I totaled up the cost of every album in my collection, shipping included, and here's the total amount I've spent. $940. Divided up, that's $11 per album. CDs are worthless, and unlike most other forms of physical media where the price shoots up inevitably, I don't really see that changing. The CD market is too big, I feel, for people to really start jacking up the prices or anything. Like, yeah, there are people like me actively collecting the format, but most sellers you encounter are just regular people. They don't care about this stupid trend of overcharging people for plastic. On the used market, at most you'll pay like $1 under original price, which is fair. I guess it helps that CD prices were never very high in the first place, so someone charging more than like 20 for one would be pretty ludicrous. The only thing I am worried about though is the price of new albums going up. Most stay at or under 15, but that could totally change. Again, anything over 20 really is pushing it. The ceiling price for a CD is pretty low. The most expensive albums in my collection were $38 and $40. One is an import and the other is 2 albums. Those aren't even bad prices factoring that in. Knowing how to scour eBay is a must if you want to quickly and cheaply grow your collection. I will get into in-person shopping in a moment, but this is the best starting point. After a year of shopping for CDs on eBay, this is my takeaway. One goes without saying, but only buy listings with real pictures. It's not the end of the world or anything, but I tended to avoid this pretty hard, and the one time I didn't, the album never showed up and I got refunded. So I don't know, I used to buy some vinyl with stock photos and that turned out well, but for used CDs, it's probably best to know what it's gonna look like. 2, camp listings. The way eBay's offer system works is pretty clever. If you like a listing to save it, the seller can send you a direct offer. So if something's up for a while and you can tell no one's gonna touch it, the seller will eventually cave most likely. You can also send offers to auctions and basically cut in front of the people bidding. Of course, I became the king of lowballing thanks to that feature. Shipping adds on like $3 to $5 to every order, so you might as well try to meet the seller in the middle and buy on site, but for $3 less than they might get some other person to pay for it. Business 101. Lastly, look for decent lots. Some kinda suck or overpriced, try to avoid those. Only get ones where you'll like most of the music in it. As far as other online retailers, I didn't stray from eBay much, but when I couldn't find a good copy of an album, I did buy from Amoeba Music. They don't have everything, but the prices were good, and most importantly, they have free shipping, so shout out to them. Where I found the best deals, however, was out in the field. Finally, I found a music store. Around me, true music stores are very limited. There's like 2 in a 30-minute radius, and every thrift store is filled with bull. I even went to this massive flea market, looped around the thing twice, zero music in sight. Found people selling boxed PS3s and animals, but no music. Insane. But the CD store, once I finally found it, was awesome. I walked in and just started flipping. I went in with a loose idea of what albums I was trying to find, but most of which were not there, sadly. I'm not going to fault the store for that. It's just a sad reality of living in the middle of nowhere. People 20 years ago weren't living here, let alone buying the stuff I like, so I've come to terms with that. I used the store to buy more of my common albums, I guess you could say. A bunch of stuff that I wasn't looking for but picked up in the moment. Their prices are unreal. Saving shipping is one thing, but on top of that, these albums were all $10 or less, brand new. Gatekeeping this place till the day I die. I was chatting it up with the owner the first time I was there, and ended up buying 3 seasons of Entourage. Like, do you know how good of a mood I have to be in to buy DVDs? TV shows are the only thing I don't spend money on. This place was great. But the cherry on top of it all was the electronics section. Again, since I live in the middle of nowhere, this store's electronics section was in reality a small box on the floor, but in it I found gold. These albums are the cheapest in my collection at $2 and $3 respectively, and they were well worth it. The first 2, even though they are electronic albums, they weren't really what I was looking for. They're chill, ambient, almost background noise kind of albums. And I know that sounds negative, but it's not. I actually really like these albums. You put them on and enjoy the vibe while you do something else. You're not really supposed to pay attention to them. These are both 2-hour-long albums after all. But this last one, Missive Collection, way more in line with what I expected. This is a really solid early 2000s electronic compilation, and I would have never heard it ever if I didn't pick it up out of that box. All these albums are nearly missing from the internet. They don't even have good covers available. So that experience, I will always be thankful for. Haven't been to the store in a while. I honestly wanted to let their catalog kind of refresh a bit, but I can't wait to see what else may be sitting there. Now with the basics of collecting and the format itself taken care of, I wanted to jump back into the pile of albums and pick out my 5 favorites along with some honorable mentions. I'm breaking these half on album quality and half on how interesting the packaging is. Let's start off with my compilation albums. I'm really glad I have these. They introduced me to a lot of unknown stuff, and the artwork on them is incredible. I don't know why they outlawed this aesthetic after 2009, but I want it back. Aside from that though, they're all pretty standard releases, so at number 5, I got Wolf. This one means a lot to me. It was my first CD that wasn't destroyed to pieces, and because of that, I ended up getting really influenced by it. I got into the Odd Future aesthetic around that time, and a lot of that phase rolled over into this, which I'm very grateful for. Along with the art, there's also a lyric book which is heavily themed around the album. Overall, a really solid CD album. None of these are going to be as cool as even a mundane vinyl, but they all do their own thing, and they do it pretty well. At 4, I got a recent favorite of mine, Pompeii Utility by Mike and Earl Sweatshirt. For starters, giant poster comes with it, hell yeah. And then with the discs themselves, I really appreciated the fact that they are on 2 discs. Like, it's the obvious route to go since these are 2 albums, but with the runtime, they could have fit it all on one, so I'm glad they didn't cheap out and force me to navigate 30 songs on 1 disc. But wait, there's more. Take a close look at the CDs for each album. They have the name written in this font, but turn them upside down and bam, it becomes the name to the other album. Clever attention to detail is the best. There was zero need to design fancy graphics for these discs. They could have been blank and it still would have done the job, but they went way above and beyond, kind of for the hell of it, and I love that. Number 3, Kid A. On the surface, this is a pretty normal release. There's no fancy printing on the CD or background art, but that's because everything neat about this is hidden. Let's start with the manual. Seems like standard art, but quickly you start hitting pages that unfold into more pages, and then these like sheet things are also in it. Then by the time you're at the end, you have an even bigger fold out of a crap ton of trippy Kid A art. Still not done though. Radiohead is known for their Easter eggs. OK Computer had one in its case, and so does Kid A, but in a completely different way. If you disassemble the case for this album, underneath it you'll find another book, but instead of art, it's deranged ramblings with lyrics from Kid A and Amnesiac sprinkled in, which I think is a really sick idea. Here's our new album. Break it open, find pieces of the next album. Brilliant. Second place goes to Yeezus. No brainer. This album's whole identity is tied to CD, so having the physical copy of it be the cover of the album itself is cool, but I do have gripes with it. Since the artwork is the album, nothing comes with this, which I guess matches the vibe of Yeezus, but there's cool stuff from this era. I would have appreciated a book or something. Then the quality control on them, mine was fine, but come on, this kind of defeats the point of everything. So due to that, I feel the most well-rounded pick for number 1 would be none other than Graduation. This album does it all. Extra artwork, cool looking CD, and a poster. Even the sticker from this album was useful. Look at how well it fits on the player. The only thing I don't like is the cardboard case, but literally everything else is done so well, I can't complain. If all CD releases had this amount of effort put into them, I think it would bring the format a lot closer to vinyl on a presentation level. Still really far away, but closer nonetheless. Alright, so rounding out the video, I'm going to talk about my setup, as it did change a lot while I built the collection. If anybody's curious, this is the name of my CD player, the JVC XL F207. I don't know how common it is, but if you can find one cheap, I recommend it. There are way better CD changers, but they all kind of do the same thing at the end of the day, unlike record players where they all vary wildly in functionality. Since this thing is so large, I moved it around a lot. Under the record player, middle shelf, now on top of the vinyl collection, where I'm probably going to leave it. I think it fits in the best there, and it's also right next to the CD albums. Hopefully the shelf doesn't break. What I haven't talked about in the video at all though is the speaker setup. I started out with the same ones I had in the vinyl video, but for some reason they sounded atrocious with the CD player. I assume this is because CDs are mixed louder than vinyl or something, but changing formats really showed how cheap they were, so I upgraded to these Edifier ones. As I've said many times before, I have no audio knowledge really, so I bought these since they were pretty popular and affordable, but I have no real clue whether they're good or not. The CD player does sound correct on it, and they get pretty loud, so that's all I needed. Also moved the speakers behind the TV, way better than whatever the hell this was. The sound travels a lot better now, and best part, I don't have to get up to lower the volume because there's a remote. My ultimate dream for this setup is to get the remote to the player itself. They're out there, but I don't need it that badly. All in all, it's kind of janky, and eventually I will have to man up and buy a preamp and figure all that out. But for now, I have the vinyl collection, the CD collection, and both of their players going into these same speakers, all set up and ready to use. Sounds like a good setup to me. In conclusion, CDs are pretty underrated. You lose the presentation and vibe of vinyl, but gain basically everything else due to this being a more recent format, while also being economical. If you asked me to pick one, I really don't think I could. For me, it's all about how I want to represent an album I like. So with that logic, they can coexist. You can have quality or you can have quantity. If you have money, vinyl just becomes both. But for most people, myself included, a moderate CD collection is more than enough. That is it for this one. Thank you so much for sticking till the end. This is the last video I'm making in this little accidental series I started. I know there's other formats and stuff I can ramble about, but I think 3 is plenty, and besides, those 3 are kind of the only ones I'm ever going to be interested in. No offense, cassette enthusiasts, just not my thing. Anyways, Like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you like music. Eventually I'm gonna talk about most of these albums I own, or the people who made them. Might as well be subbed. Follow my socials cause I posted all of my music there way early in the year, teasing this video, so don't miss out the next time I do that. Stay clouded everyone, see ya.